Okay, so today we'll be talking about some drawing commands and object snaps. And really, the first thing I want to talk about is the line command and object snaps. Okay, so I'm just going to open up, let's see, I'm going to go to our CAD Common drive here. So I'm going to go to this PC and, hold on one second. Okay, so in CAD Common we have all of those drawings, right, that these are the in-class files that I will use to show examples. And I'll post these as well, right, on our Canvas site so you have them in case you want to use them at home. But we have a couple here. We have object snap examples, snap 1, 2, and 3. And then we have, let's see here. Those might be the ones we want. Let's see. I think those are just going to be the ones we're going to work in today. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to open up snap 1 here. Okay, and I'm going to look at snap 2. I'm going to open up snap 3. There we go. And I'm also going to open up one more, and it's going to be, let's see which one I want. This one right here, move, copy, offset. We're going to open up that one. Okay, so I just zoom extents, click, click, my middle roller twice very quickly to get that to open up. I'm going to go back to object snap 1 here, and I kind of, I introduced you to the idea of an object snap, I think the last time that we met, and I just want to make sure that you understand what they are and then how to use them, okay? They're very easy to use. The idea of an object snap is it will allow you to find certain points on lines or draw a certain way, okay? And the idea of having them is to help you draw more precisely in AutoCAD. So we want straight lines. If you want to draw something from, for example, a midpoint, we want to make sure that you hit that exact midpoint, okay? So that's what our drawing aids will help us do. I'm going to use the words drawing aids, object snaps, snaps, running snaps. I'm going to use all of those terms when I talk about object snaps, and they really all mean the same thing, okay? So when I say any one of those, just know that I mean object snaps, okay? So let's talk about where our object snaps are located, how we turn them on and off, what they look like on the screen, all right? And then I'll show you how to use some of the drawing commands with them, okay? So this is killing me. Our screen is cut off just a little bit here. And I'm not sure how to fix that. Okay. Well, I think you all can hopefully, when you watch this video, you'll be able to see this. But anyway. All right, so our object snaps, if you come down here to our object snap toolbar, it's down here in the bottom right hand of our screen, you'll see we have a bunch of different buttons, okay? And if the button is blue, like this one right here, dynamic mode, if that button is blue, that means it's turned on, okay? So dynamic mode, we know what that is. This is dynamic mode, when you have all that input at your cursor, okay? If I click on it, it turns off. It grays out and it's turned off, all right? So now when I draw something, I don't see all that dynamic input, okay? So that's the first thing. To turn these on and off, you're gonna click on them, okay? Now, by default, if it's turned on, that means it's a running operation. And by running operation, what I mean by that is it's turned on all the time. So if I want to use an object snap and this is highlighted, right? The object snap is highlighted. That means that it's always going to be on and always available for me to use while I'm drawing, okay? So there's a few different object snap buttons I want to bring your awareness to. The first one is ortho mode, okay? So it looks like this little T-square. It shows a little 90-degree angle right there, okay? Ortho mode is a special kind of drawing aid, and I'm just going to illustrate what it looks like, okay? And then as I show you the different commands, I'll show you how these work. But when I, for example, click on the line command, do you see how when I move my cursor about as I draw my line, with ortho turned on, do you see how my lines are just perfectly straight, right? Ortho means that our lines are going to be orthogonal. They're going to be perfectly straight when they're drawn. So with ortho turned on, ortho mode turned on, I can't draw a line that is diagonal, right? And you'll notice as you move your cursor around, you see that, okay? So if I draw with my ortho on, straight lines, click, click. See, I can't come up here and click and have it be a crooked line, right? We love ortho in AutoCAD because we get straight lines with it, okay? Escape, escape. Now, if I hit the line command again and I come down and I turn ortho off, click, and I click, you see the free movement that I now have, okay? The keyboard shortcut for ortho is F8. If you're thinking about purchasing a new laptop anytime in the future, I would suggest, number one, a PC, just because, right, Autodesk products not work better, but they just play nicer with PCs. But then I would also make sure that you look for the function keys at the top of your keyboard, because in AutoCAD and in Revit, you use them quite a bit, okay? I bought a laptop, my last laptop I didn't, realize, I realized we use the F keys, but I forgot to look for that on my laptop, and I'm really bummed about it. So make sure that you have the function keys available if you purchase a new computer. So if I press F8, my ortho turns back on, right? And you'll notice down here it's highlighted, okay? So F8 off, F8 on, F8 off, F8 on. And again, I'm a keyboard person, so I don't like to have to come down here and find my icon down here. I like just to be able to press it on the keyboard, okay? Escape. I'm going to select all these items and I'm going to hit delete. Okay, so ortho is going to be probably one of the most significant things that you use in AutoCAD, probably one of the biggest things that you turn on and off all the time, okay, because we want straight lines generally. Now, ortho, when you turn it on and off during a command, won't cancel the command. And that is true for any one of these little commands down here on the Object Snap toolbar, okay? So if I have the line command initiated, I click, move in the direction I want to go, I come down here, I turn ortho on, click, it doesn't break my command, okay? If I press F8 in my command, it doesn't break it, okay? So don't be afraid to turn these things on and off as you're working because they don't break commands, all right? So ortho makes straight lines, okay? We also have polar tracking right here, F10, okay? Polar tracking will allow you to create straight lines at a specific angle. So if I click on polar tracking, you'll see me hit a specific angle 0 and I get a green line that extends. That shows me that whatever my polar tracking is set at, if I click now, I'll get that angle. I don't know what it's set at. Oh, there we go. 315. Let's go this direction. 45. So it's set at a 45-degree angle. So with my polar tracking on, I can reach a specific angle without having to really do anything, right? I don't have to measure, I don't have to input any type of ordered pair to get that angle, okay? And I get a straight line, okay? Pretty important when you're drawing something that you want to have manufactured, right? We're laser cutting something. You want your angles to be extremely precise, right? You want them to be exactly what they need to be so that when that product is sold, it's up to specification. F10, my polar tracking turns off. F10, it turns back on. F10 off, F10 back on, okay? I can also come down here and turn it on and off. There we go. Polar tracking has some inherent settings in it that you can change because you're very likely not always going to want to draw a 45-degree angle, right? Maybe you want a 30-degree, maybe you want a 12-degree, you want something, right? So if you come down here to polar tracking, you're going to notice there's a little drop-down arrow next to it. And if you click on that, you can see you can get these different subsets of angles, okay? So if I want this to snap at an 18-degree angle, I click on that. And now every time I move, I get these 18-degree increments, okay? So that's polar tracking. So we have ortho for completely straight lines. We have polar tracking for straight lines at a specific angle, okay? And I can hit escape to get out of those. So the next thing we're going to talk about are the actual object, the snaps that we are going to be using, okay? This little icon right here that looks like a square with a little square on the corner with a drop down, this is our object snap icon, okay? And there's a little drop down menu next to it, and if I click on that, you'll see that I have these are all of the different object snaps that are available in AutoCAD, okay? If there is a check mark next to it, that means that it's turned on, and that means that it will automatically appear in my drawing board as I draw. I don't have to go in and choose it, okay? So we have endpoint, midpoint, center, geometric center, node, intersection, and extension turned on. The other one I might turn on is perpendicular. That one's a pretty helpful one. And nearest, I like that one on as well, okay? These are going to be to your personal preference. I know Naima, who also teaches AutoCAD, she doesn't like midpoint, so she always turns it off, right? But me, I love midpoint, so I keep it turned on, okay? So we can turn them on and off here. I can also click on this little drop down and choose Object Snap Settings down here at the bottom. That brings up a dialog box where I can kind of click and turn these on and off as well, okay? So this is kind of the same thing. I can achieve this same thing also by just clicking and choosing here as well, right? In AutoCAD, you're going to find we can do things, 15 different ways, and not one is more correct than the other, okay? All right, so I'm going to hit Escape. My object snaps are turned on right now, so if I draw a line that I want to connect at a specific point on something else, I hover over it. This is a little tricky because my midpoint is also being obscured by an endpoint of this line, okay? But I have my midpoint. See, when I move in there, do you see how that's my nearest snap engages? And then as I move more towards a midpoint, the midpoint engages, okay? If I click when it says midpoint, or I see that icon, that illustration on the screen, click, I'm now at my midpoint, okay? So if I wanted to recreate this drawing over here, right? From the midpoint here, I want to choose the midpoint here, click. Well, I want to keep going. Midpoint over here, click. Midpoint over here, click. Midpoint or endpoint here, click, escape. Okay? I'm using the line command right now, all right? So to initiate the line command and really any other command in AutoCAD, we have a couple different ways we can go about it. I can click on the icon here. Most of our drawing commands are located under the Home tab here, okay? And I have line, polyline, circle, and arc available. I have rectangle, ellipse, and then I have hatch. And if I click on this little drop down, I have a few more available we're not going to use just yet, okay? But to initiate the line command, I can click here. I can also type L-I-N-E, and if you have dynamic input, L-I-N-E starts appearing at your cursor, but I don't have that turned on, so it started appearing it down here in the command line. Okay, so L-I-N-E, enter. So the way the line command generally works, it's a direct entry. So I click to initiate my beginning point, I move in the direction I want to go, and I either type in a dimension or I click. So we're just going to click to illustrate. Click, 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 click. You may start, with this entry seeing why it's so important to be able to do things like turn on ortho where I get straight lines, or polar tracking where I get, specific diagonal lines, because we're moving our mouse in the direction we want to go and we're clicking. So, I can eyeball it and I can say, well, that looks pretty straight, right? We don't ever do that in AutoCAD. We always turn on ortho or polar tracking to get our straight lines, right? We don't click and then we don't kind of hope that we sort of got the line straight or whatever angle. We make sure, okay? So if I'm drawing like this, just straight lines, I hit F8. See immediately my screen changed a little, right? Move in this direction, click, F8 to turn it off, click, F8 to turn it back on, and you'll see a perpendicular snap pop up. That means it's going to intersect perfectly at right angles and be straight. Click, escape. Okay, so line is point and shoot, right? You click, move in the direction you want to go, and you click. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to finish using these object snaps, and then we're going to talk about creating dimensional lines, right? It's great that we can click and we can create straight and diagonal lines, but what if I want to create a line that is 10 feet long? Or what if I want to measure a line I've already created, okay? So I want to finish drawing this, and I'm not going to use any measuring. I'm just going to use my object snaps and my line command to create these, okay? We don't know how to do circles just yet. I am going to create, now I want to create this little object over here, okay? So down here it tells me I need to turn on a quadrant snap, object snap, to help me out. So I'm going to come down here to my object snaps. There, where's quadrant? There we go, click. Okay, I come up here to line. I come back down here. Okay, on a circle we have quadrants. See my quadrant snap engage? Click. There's my next quadrant snap. Click. 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 Okay. So midpoint, we have endpoint, we have quadrant. You guys get the idea of what an object snap will do for you? Shows you things on other lines. Okay. So really helpful. I leave mine on all the time. Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about, we can use our object snaps to create this, but what happens if I want to create a line that's dimensional, right? What happens if I want to create a line that is 5 feet long? All right. So the first thing I want to introduce you to is the idea of units in AutoCAD. Okay. Down here in our object snap toolbar as well, we have this area. It's called the units. I guess drop down or setting, right? If you can't see this, if you don't have something that says decimal right now, come over here to these 3 little lines, click, and you're going to turn on units. It may not be turned on your computer. Okay. So with units turned on, this will show us visually what kind of units we're drawing in AutoCAD. So in engineering, you're going to be using probably a lot of decimal type inputs, right? In architecture, you'll be using imperial units, right? Other applications, or maybe if you're not drawing here in the US, or for engineering, metrics, right? In this case, we're going to be using decimal in this drawing, but I can also change this to architectural, right? So I can change this to architectural, okay? So let's do that for a second. And I want to talk a little bit about inputting dimensions in AutoCAD. I'm going to click on the line tool. Okay. I'm going to object snap to the endpoint here. Click. I'm going to move in the direction I want to go. And you see that my ortho's on, so I'm getting a perfectly straight line. And then near my cursor, you see a dimension popping up. And it says 0 foot 5 3/16 of an inch. Great. If I come down here and I change this back to decimal, now you see ortho's turned on and I have 4.4030. Okay, and that's decimal inches. All right. Change this back to architectural. Okay, nice visual illustration of what units we're drawing in. Okay, if I wanted to create a line that was 8 inches long right now, okay, I'm of course I could click to end this line. I could move this out to where it says 8 inches. Ooh, it's getting close. 8 1/4, 8 3/16, 8 1/8, 8 1/16, 8, right? I could click right there and I could get 8 inches. But that's kind of a pain in the neck. You don't want to be doing that while you're drafting along, right? It's not quick. So a better way of going about that would be to input 8 inches. So click to initiate your line command, move in the direction you want to go, and I'm going to type 8, enter. Okay. So what happened there was, because I was in architectural units, because I had clicked a first point, because I'd moved in the direction I wanted to go, I hit 8, enter, and because inches are the default units in AutoCAD, that just defined that line to be 8 inches long. Okay? If I move in an upward direction now, I could type 10, enter. My line moves off the screen, but I can pan down or zoom out, and I have a 10-inch long line. Let's move in the direction we want to go and type 8, enter. There we go. We have another 8-inch line. And I could come down here and now object snap to finish that up. Click, escape, escape. And I've just created a rectangle using 4 lines. Okay. So how do I then measure this once I've created it, right? I think one of the most tricky points about AutoCAD is that, right now as we're looking at this, I have, other than I just drew something here, I have no indication of how big these things are, right? I can look at it and say that this rectangle right here is 400 feet by 400 feet, or I could look at it and say it's 1 inch by 1 inch. I have no kind of graphic illustration of how big these objects are, right? So I need to be able to measure things. I need to be able to draw things and then measure them in AutoCAD, okay? So I use the line command and all these drawing tools to draw things. I input, right, numbers or dimensions to make them dimensional, and then I measure them to make sure they're correct, okay? So there's a couple of different ways that we can measure things here in AutoCAD. The command at the command line is DIST, distance, okay? DIST. These commands, you'll notice, they shortcut. You get sort of a auto prediction happening down here at the bottom of my screen here. So I can, with distance just typed, I could hit enter, or I could click on one of these. Click, and it initiates the command, okay? Get used to looking down here at your command line and seeing specify first point. Okay, well, if I want to measure this line right here, I specify my first point by clicking on an endpoint, click. I click on my second endpoint, click. And then you'll notice down here at my command line, it says the distance is 8 inches, right? The distance in the X direction is 8 inches. So I'm able to measure that and then look down here at my command line and see that measurement. Escape, escape. Distance, D-I-S-T, enter. Click, click. 10 inches, 10 inches. Okay, D-I-S-T, enter. Let's measure the diagonal. It is 1 foot and 3/16 of an inch. Okay, so we have 8 inches, 10 inches. There's your algebra right there. Maybe just do algebra in AutoCAD, right? Measure things. Who needs to calculate that stuff? But I just had my diagonal that I could measure. Okay, so DIST, enter, and good question. Where is? Let's see. I can't remember where the distance command is on the icon there. Let's look. I'm going to Google, since I can't remember, distance command icon AutoCAD. Solved. This is an Autodesk forum. Very helpful place if you ever have a question that you can't figure out. Google it in plain English and say in AutoCAD. So the distance command here, let's see. Annotate, utilities, and measure flyout. So annotate, and let's see, what did it say? Used to just be measure. Utilities panel, default tool on the flyout. Measure. No. Failing here, where is it? Huh. Let's see, that didn't really help me. Oh, there it is, utilities, okay. So this is actually on the home tab. Oh, no, not annotation. It looks like it's not there anymore. It's been moved. So under the home tab, all the way here at the end, there's our measure tool. If you drop down, right, we have quick, distance, radius, angle, so you have a bunch of different ways you can measure, okay? Again, I use the keyboard a lot. You probably see me do this. Oh, I forgot where the measure tool was, right? The icon, because I do type things in so often, right? So we draw things. You can come up here, click on measure, right? This actually gives more of a dynamic way of measuring things. If I hover over the object, it gives me a quick measure, okay? Distance, click, click, and that gives me our distance down here, okay? The quick measure, if you're kind of wondering what that was, as I hover over something, it almost gives me, this is kind of a Revit-esque type interface where I don't really have to dimension or measure something. If I hover near it, it gives me a sense of how big it is, right? So 8 inches, as I move inside, it shows me that those are perfectly straight. So there's our quick, okay? All right, escape, escape. So with my lines, I move in the direction I want to go, I turn my ortho on or off, and I input a dimension, right? I can also click and just, kind of eyeball what I want my dimensions to be. I can then measure things to make sure that they're the right size, right? By using distance or measure, whatever option with that you want to use, okay? So let's talk a little bit about the syntax of our inputs here. And I'm just going to use a text tool to do this. And I'm hoping that this is going to be an okay size so that we can view it. So that I don't want to write on the board just because I want the online students to be able to see this as well. Okay. But what I want to do is I want to show you the inputs for inputting dimensions. Okay. So if I want to create a line that's 8 inches long, I just type 8 with an enter. Okay, 8, enter. And because the default unit in AutoCAD is the inch, AutoCAD will assume that that's 8 inches. Okay, if I want to do 8 feet, I have to type 8 and then the foot mark, and then enter. Okay, if I want to do a combination, 8 foot, 8 inches, I type 8 foot, 8, and then I hit enter. Okay. If I want to do 8 foot, 8.5 inches, I would type 8 foot, 8 foot, 8 slash 1/2. Okay. Whoops, and then enter. Okay. So this is going to be, these are going to be the formats of how we input different dimensions. Okay. 8, enter, or whatever number defaults to the default unit, which is inches. 8 with a foot mark, 8 foot. Okay, 8 foot 8, 8 foot 8 inches. And AutoCAD, I don't have to put in the inch mark here because AutoCAD assumes this 8 without a unit is the inch. You look like you have a question. No? Okay. The other thing we can do, and you'll see me doing this a lot as well, is I don't really like entering the foot mark. I feel like I have to look down at the keyboard and I have to find it, right? And I don't like doing that. So another thing you can do is, what is 8 feet in inches? 96 inches, right? So I could type 8 with the foot mark, or I could type 96 with no indication of unit, and AutoCAD would assume 96 inches, which is 8 feet. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 different ways you can kind of input things here. Okay, whatever way your brain thinks. Mine always goes to inches. 10 feet, 120 inches, right? 12 foot, 144 inches, because I don't like to find that foot mark and hit that on the keyboard. Okay, so this is going to be the way that you enter dimensions. So let's try that out. I'm going to do L for line, enter, click. Let's just do 6 inches. 6, enter. Okay, escape. L for line, enter. You see this snap that I'm using here? I'm going to hover my mouse over the end point of that. I want my next line to be directly below that one. This is an extension snap. Okay, we have a lot of drawing type snaps where endpoint, midpoint, center, node, quadrant, those are all going to hit on a line, and they'll show you a little symbol on a piece of geometry. Intersection and extension, those are going to show you where imaginary things happen. We'll say it that way, right? So if I hover and I do not click, and then I move my mouse down, oh, now it's not wanting, there we go. See, now as I move down, if I click where that invisible thing is happening, if I click, those pieces line up. Okay, so let's do, we'll do 6 foot. We'll do it in the opposite direction. 6 with a foot mark at the command line. Enter. Escape, escape. So there's 6 inches, there's 6 feet. L for line, enter. I hover, I don't click. I move downward, I get that snap again, click. Okay, let's do 6 foot 6 inches. So 6 foot mark 6. I can't get out of the 6 foot 6 using the foot mark in this case unless I do a little addition. 6 foot, 12 inches a foot, that's 72 inches plus 6 inches, that would be 78 inches, right? So I could type 6 foot mark 6 or 78 inches and get the same thing. Okay, 6 foot 6, enter. Escape, escape. Okay. So here's a little bit of a tricky thing, all right? So I'm typing in imperial units right now, you know, feet and inches. And the reason that AutoCAD is recognizing those inputs is because I have my units set to architectural units. I've defined architectural units in AutoCAD, okay? Which means When I hit L, enter, click, move in the direction I want to go, type 6 foot, enter, I get something happening, right? And if I hit escape and I zoom out and I want to measure this, DIST, enter, click, click, I see down here it says 6 feet. Great, that's wonderful. If I had accidentally forgotten to change these units and I left them in decimal, okay, because I have set AutoCAD's drawing space to recognize decimal units, if I try and input feet and inches, which is a different system, click, move in the direction I want to go, I type 6 foot, enter, nothing happens, right? And AutoCAD's not really doing anything. 6 foot, enter. I don't get an error that says, hey, I don't recognize these units. Nothing happens, right? So I get emails from students that are beginning students and they're like, I'm trying to input this and my line is just not working. I hit 6 foot, I hit enter and nothing happens, right? So if you're working and you're inputting, you start to try and input something and it doesn't function, that's likely the first thing I'm going to say. I'm going to say, well, are your units correct, right? Is AutoCAD recognizing what you're inputting into it, okay? So escape, escape, easy enough to change the units, make sure it's an architectural, okay? Okay, so we know how to draw a line, we know how to input a dimensional line. Does this all make sense so far? Does everybody following along so far? Any questions? Okay. So how do we use this to actually draw something, right? Let me pull our assignment that you're going to have. Let's open that up. Assignments. Okay. And we have this one that you're going to be working with. And it's going to look going to look somewhat like this, right? You're going to start drawing things. And this one is going to be some walls and a door, okay? So with the line command, we can draw maybe the walls here. We can draw this panel of the door, okay? So let me show you how to do that. And I know this sounds really silly, and I say this and people, maybe think it sounds very simple, but when you're drawing things in the real world and you're getting paid for it, right? You draw things the way they look and the size that they are, right? So that wall, right? If I look at this wall here, it is, let's zoom in there a little bit. It's 4 feet long, right? And it is 3.5 plus a half, 4.5 inches in depth. Its width is 4.5 inches. So I'm going to draw a line that starts here, is straight, and is 4 feet long. I'm going to draw another line that moves in the vertical direction, 4.5 inches, and I'm going to draw a third line that goes over another 4 feet, right? When I draw the door panel, I'm going to draw a line that is 3 foot long, and then 1.5 inches, and then back down 3 foot and go over and close it off, right? What I see here is what I draw, and I draw it the same size that I see it. Okay, so draw things the way that they look. So if I come over here, I'm going to delete a few of these things. So to remind you about selection, I can click, hit delete, click, hit delete, click, hit delete, right? I can select all these using a selection window, delete, select, delete. Okay. Okay, L for line. I click, I move in the direction I want to go. I type 4 foot. Enter, or spacebar. Spacebar's enter. Okay. Zoom out a little bit, pan over. If my line continues to stay off the page and I'm panning and I'm panning and I'm panning and I'm panning and I can't get it back on the screen, I can hit escape. Double click my middle roller button twice. Click, click to zoom extents. Zoom out a little bit and there's my line. Okay, trying to remind you about all of these different little tools, okay? L for line, I can restart my line. How do I kind of start back up once I've hit escape? Well, I object snap. See, as I touch that, I get an endpoint. Click, move in the direction I want to go. My ortho's turned on. If I wanted to turn it off, I would press F8, but then I risk sort of getting a crooked line, right? F8, turn it back on. I type 4 for 4 inches, enter. zoom back out, move back in this direction, 4 foot, enter, escape, escape, and there's one side of my wall, right? Now I need to leave a gap that is 3 feet long, and then I need another wall over here, right? So we don't know a whole lot yet. We basically know a little bit about object snaps. We'll finish that up as we move through some more of these commands, right? We know the line command. We know how to zoom and select and delete and measure and all those things, but I don't know how to draw circles or rectangles or arcs or anything like that yet, right? I don't know how to leave gaps in walls. I don't know how to get a line that is exactly 3 feet away from this line, right? But you will, in the next week or so, you will. You'll learn very quickly how to do all of that, okay? But one thing I do want to point out with this kind of drafting, kind of the AutoCAD drafting workflow is that sometimes you have to create geometry to use it to measure something and then you delete it. We have a lot of wasteful geometry in AutoCAD, okay? But that's okay because it's free. We can delete things and it doesn't matter. Okay, so with the skills that we have currently, I could use my line command. I could click on the endpoint. You see my snap is engaging. Click, move in the direction I want to go. I could type 3 foot, enter. And guess what? Now I know that I have left a 3 foot opening there, right? And now I can go back and use the line tool and I could draw, click, a 4-inch. Remember this thing was what, 4.5 inches actually, or was it 4? 3.5? Did I do it 4? And I drew it wrong, didn't I? Distance. Let's do distance. Click, click. Oh, I did 4. Made a mistake. Whoops. Right. We'll just leave it at 4 right now. But L for line. Enter. I hover. I click. I move in the direction I want to go. I type 4. Enter. I move in the direction I want to go. I can continue, right? I can type 4 foot. I could also type 48. 48, because that's 4 feet is 48 inches. Enter. Escape, escape. L for line. Enter. Come up here and snap. Click. Move in the direction I want to go. And type 48. Enter. Escape. Now I have this here, and you're like, that doesn't go there. Doors don't have that, right? So now I can click on it, and I can hit delete. Right? So essentially what I did is I drew a line that I knew I'd have to delete in a second, and then I drew a little bit more, right? And that's completely valid. In AutoCAD, we draw geometry to create geometry, and then sometimes we delete it. We throw it away. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. All right. As we kind of look at this, I'm going to go over a couple more object snaps, okay? So we know midpoint, we know endpoint, we know quadrant now, all right? I want to talk about nearest. So the nearest, and we'll talk about nearest and perpendicular, okay? So I'm going to just initiate a command, L for line, enter, to get those snaps to show up for me. The nearest object snap will allow you to, as you hover near a line, it allows you to just pick on that line. You see how I get that little kind of, I guess it looks maybe like a little egg timer, right? But that's what a near snap looks like. And what's nice about that is that I can just hover my mouse over a line or geometry, and as I click, I know that at least wherever it is on that line, I don't know where it's at, but I know that I've hit that line to connect with it, okay? And then I can move towards another line, and with my perpendicular snap-on, if I click while that's perpendicular, I know, escape, escape, that point to that point, they're perfectly straight across from one another, right? This point, this line is perpendicular to that one, and this point from this end point of this line is on this line right here, okay? So L for line, nearest, click, perpendicular, I get a straight line across, click, okay? L for line, so we have perpendicular, we have nearest, and we know quadrant, midpoint, intersection. What was the other one I was just talking about? I've already forgotten. Endpoint, midpoint, center. Let's do center. So center will allow you to pick the center of a circle. So L for line, If I wanted to draw a line from the center of this circle, you notice that as I hover over and I sort of touch the circle, I get this little plus sign in the center. If I click on that, you see my center point engages, and there's my center point. Escape. L for line. Okay, there's a midpoint at the center point of these circles, but as I click and I hover over the circle, you see that midpoint pops up as well. Okay, I click, I hover, I move my mouse over to the center and I click. Escape, escape. Okay, L for line, enter, hover, click, there we go. Okay, let me just look here real quick. Okay, we'll do this exercise in a second. All right, so we know how to draw a line. We know about a lot of our object snaps. We know how to create dimensional lines. Let's talk about how we can now create, let's skip to circles, okay? So I'm just gonna move up here to these two walls that I've drawn, and I wanna create a circle on one of these edges of this wall right here. Okay, I'm going to delete it, but I'm just going to show you how to create the circle at the edge of a wall here. All right, the circle command is located right here under the drawing tool palette on the home tab, and we have a lot of different types of circles we can generate. Okay, so we have center radius, center diameter, 2-point, 3-point, and I'm not going to worry about these last two. Okay, let me just look real quick for a file, hold on one second, that I'm thinking of. So let's open this one, arc, circle, ellipse. Okay, so right here, if I zoom extents, there's a lot in this file. Here's the little exercise I'm going to be looking at. Okay. And this shows us what kind of circles we generate with the different commands. So to create a circle with a radius, okay, this is really the type of circle you generate. When it says center radius, it's telling you what you have to define to create that circle. So you have to define a center point, and then you have to specify a radius to create this circle. To create this circle, center diameter, you specify a center point and then a diameter. 2 points, you specify 2 points between objects to create a 2-point circle. And then 3-point, you're going to specify 3 points to create that circle. And I'm not going to worry about these last two because, quite honestly, they function very similarly to these two, and I've never once ever used these. So I think you could use these two, and it's the same thing. Okay. So center radius. Here's our center radius. The radius, of course, is from the center to the edge on one side. Okay, so if I click on center radius, I click on a center point wherever I want my circle to happen. Okay, click, move in the direction I want it to grow, and I type in a radius, 1, enter. Okay, so a 1-inch diameter, 1-inch radius means a 2-inch diameter. Right? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Diameter circle. I'm going to click on center diameter. Okay. I'm going to click here. Here's my center point. Click. And the diameter is going to be 1 inch. Enter. Okay. So the diameter means that it's the measurement all the way across the circle, of course. So with a 1-inch diameter, we have a 1/2-inch radius. Okay. A 2-point circle. These are the easiest. 2 points. Well, I want my circle to be between here and here. Click, click. So really, you just specify 2 points. So if you have a circle that is living between two objects and you don't know the distance between them or whatever, right? You can use the 2-point. Let's delete that. Click and delete. Let's use the 2-point circle to generate that. Click, click, 2-point circle. The 3-point circle works in the same manner. Okay, so circle, 3-point, click once, click twice, click 3 times, and we get a 3-point circle. Okay, so same thing with it. We could do a 2-point circle here, circle, 2-point, click, click, right? We get that. You guys get the idea. So circles are very easy to use. Circles are going to be used in, we could use circles in, I'm going to switch drawings. Or no, I don't have to switch drawings actually. Let's go to Canvas here, right? With a little bit of information on another modification tool, I could actually kind of create a circle for this door swing and then trim off what I don't need, right? We're going to use an arc to do this, but I could also use a circle. Circles are used all over AutoCAD. Lines, circles, rectangles, probably the most common tools in AutoCAD. Okay, so look at this, using circles and arcs, right? This is a really great way, this exercise is a really great way to get you using circles and arcs. Okay, so circle, let's see which one is the best one. I haven't done some of these in a while. We'll do a 3-point circle. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is that outline, right? So I just used a 3-point circle to create that inner one right there. Okay, and we don't know arc yet. We're going to learn arc here in a second, but I have these crossbars that I need to create. And so line, I'm going to use, oh, there's a midpoint, right? Good job. Midpoint to midpoint. Escape, enter, or sorry, line. Click, click, there we go. I've got my crossbars going there, right? Now I need to create my circle here. Well, I don't really know what size that is. I could measure it if I need to. We need to really create our arcs to get that measurement. So we'll talk about arcs next, okay? And this is going to be, let's see our circle here. Center radius. I can click and I can specify a radius if I want to, okay? But I can also use my mouse to specify a radius. So there's always hey, I can input a number to specify a radius, but then there's also, I can use my mouse and visually use my object snaps to also achieve that same thing. Click, click, and I've just created my other circle there, okay? So I have my outer circle, I have my inner circle, I have my crossbars, I have these lines that I generated. Really, it's just now I need to learn how to create my arcs, and this circle will just be another 3-point circle inside those arcs, okay? This is going to be kind of the same methodology you use to create your assignment, really. So one of your assignments will be something like this, where you draw a square, you draw a circle inside the square, midpoint to midpoint to midpoint to midpoint, right? Then you draw lines across. Then you draw a circle on the inside, right? Hint, hint. You can measure these if you need to get the right sizes if you can't quite figure them out using object snaps, okay? Then this is going to go from midpoint of that perpendicular to that circle, right? So use all of those tools to sort of figure out how to create these blocks, okay? This one is kind of interesting. This would be an apparent intersection. Okay, so if I wanted to draw a circle that is right in the center of this circle, okay, I want to show you, I'm going to initiate my circle. If I hover over here, remember how I could get an intersection to happen, right? I can do that vertically and horizontally at the same time. It's not just a vertical tool. If I hover over here, you see, I can sort of start to either, number one, I know my midpoint is engaging, but let's pretend the circle wasn't there. That's kind of interfering. You see how this starts to allow me to pick that point without drawing anything, right? I picked the midpoint of that. Another way I could pick the midpoint of this without any trouble, I could use L for line. I could draw a line from the midpoint to the midpoint. If I initiate my circle command, now I can pick the midpoint of that. Oh, I made that a little too big. Okay. There's nothing wrong with generating geometry that's extra to then delete it. And in this case, the extra would have been that line, to click it and delete it and get rid of it. Okay. All right, so we know lines, we know circles. Let's talk about arcs next. And that may well, let's do arcs and let's do ellipses. And that might get us pretty close to getting through today, actually. It's kind of, we'll see how we do. All right, so let's talk about arcs next. I'm going to zoom extents, okay? What are arcs going to be used for? Arcs are going to be used for creating door swings, okay? Arcs are going to be used maybe in your assignment. No, not in this assignment, but in a future assignment you will use arcs, okay? And I always joke because I feel like arcs are my nemesis. I don't like arcs in AutoCAD. For whatever reason, I don't feel like they work for me. I know how to use them. I know how to input them, right? But they just never work out for me. So there's another way that I tend to go about creating my arcs for my door swings. I will draw a circle and trim off what I don't need instead of drawing an arc, which is very likely the quicker way of going about it, just drawing an arc. But I just don't like them. They're my nemesis in AutoCAD, right? All right. So I'm going to zoom in here to this door swing, okay? And this is kind of the same thing that we drew in that previous exercise that we sort of started, right? So I'm going to go back to my previous exercise. Here is, the one side of my wall. Here is the other side of my wall, okay? I will delete this right here. I'm going to hit delete so that I can show you how that's drawn, and then we'll talk about drawing the arc, okay? So my line tool, I'm going to click on the endpoint here, move in the direction I want to go, type 3 foot, enter. Move in the direction I want to go. It's 1.5 inches, so I'm going to type 1 and 1/2. So 1 dash 1 over 1/2. You can see that on my command line. Enter. I'm going to come down here and I can type 36, which is also 3 feet. Enter. And I can finish without typing in any dimension. Escape. That's how we drew that door swing right there, okay? Now it's time to create an arc. We need to create an arc from here to there. And we have a couple of different types of arcs, all right? The first thing that I don't like about arcs, number one, there's 9 of them, 10 of them. Why do you need 10 different arcs, right? Maybe you engineers need 10 different types of arcs. I'm really only going to go through just a few of them because the rest I feel like are just very redundant, okay? So that's number one. I don't like arcs. Number two, I think that sometimes, it tells you we have a start, a center, and an end. I think the way that they're described is a little bit confusing, right? Once you get the hang of it, it's fine. But even still, I like, oh, did I input the right thing? And it's confusing. So we'll go through a few of these. I'm not going to go through all of them again, but we'll go through a few. Okay, so generally speaking, an arc has 3 inputs to define it. That's the other thing I don't like, right? With a circle, you have 2 inputs. We have a 3-point arc. We have a start, center, end, start, center, angle, and start, center, length, okay? These are going to be the 4 we're going to talk about, okay? So I'm going to start with start, center, and end, okay? Now, the way that an arc is formed, it's based on a circle. So when I say center point, the center point of the arc is actually the center point of the circle that the arc is formed off of, okay? So really, in imaginary world, if I'm drawing an arc that goes from here to here, right? Then the center of that is at the center of where my circle would be. So the center of my circle is here, okay? So I have a start point, I have an end point, and then I have a center right here, okay? So I'm going to delete that. So the other thing I want to point out is that arcs, they're based on the right-hand rule, which means basically that counterclockwise is a positive type, is a positive arc, okay? So if you form an arc in the counterclockwise direction, it will be a positive arc, and if you type anything in as a dimension, it will be positive. But if you go in the clockwise direction, it will be a negative arc, okay? So I click on arc, I'm going to choose start, center, end. So my start point is going to be here, click. My end point is going to be over here, click. And my center point will be here, click. Oh, and it didn't work. I think I had an object snapping gauge, sorry guys. See, it doesn't like me either. Hold on one second. Here we go. Turn that off. There we go. Okay. I had another object snap engage, which is what happened. So I want my start point here, I want my end point here, and I want my center to point to be right here. You just saw kind of a problem with object snaps. What happened there was one of my object snaps engaged, I'm not sure which one, but it overrode where I was going to click and said, hey, your endpoint is actually going to be over here, not where you're clicking, okay? So sometimes you may need to turn your object snaps on or off during a command, and this is probably one of them. So let me show you how to do that. I'm going to click on Arc, Start, Center, End. I'm going to start it because I need to object snap to get it started. Click. And then I'm going to come down to my snap and turn it off. Okay. So that essentially kind of killed any object snap that was going to interfere. I can turn it back on to snap to that endpoint. Click. And it's kind of getting a little bit out of control. Oh, shoot. Sorry, guys. See, this is why I hate ARC. There's too many inputs. Start, center, end. We're on the start, center, end. Let me start over. Start, center, end. Okay. Start, click. Okay. Center, the center of the circle. Click. There we go. And endpoint. Click. There we go. My object snap didn't engage. Okay, perfect, wonderful ARC. If I had done it the opposite direction, let's do the opposite direction. Started here, gone this direction. Right? Do you see how it forms the opposite direction? Okay. So if I start this way and kind of move clockwise over to this direction, it goes the other way. So I started at the bottom and I went up to the top, which is kind of that counterclockwise motion. It's going to the, it applies to the right hand rule and it moves the way it should. Let me do it one more time. Arc. Start, center, end. Start, click. Center, click. End, click. Great. Okay. So I have my arc. Let's do the next type of arc, which is, let's do a start, center, angle. Okay. So I have my start point, start, click. If I forget where I'm at, which I just did, I can look down here at my command line, specify the center point of the arc. Okay. Whew, right. There's my center point, click, and now an angle. Okay, so I'm going to specify an angle on a circle that this will encompass. So if I type in 45, that arc will only go to there. If I type in 90, it will go to here. You guys get, if I type in 180, you get the idea, it will go to there. Okay, so I'm going to type in 90 degrees, enter. Start, center, right? There we go. Delete. Arc. Start, center, length. Okay, so this is going to show kind of a chord length. So I have my start point, click. I forgot where I was at, so specify center point of arc, okay, center point, click, and then length, which is really kind of almost the same as the endpoint, right? But what AutoCAD wants to see is the length from here to there. Click. Okay. So the idea behind this one's pretty self-explanatory, but the idea start, center, length is that start, center, the length could really kind of be anything. If you didn't know the angle, right, it could go out to here, it could kind of stop there. It's just another way of inputting an arc. Okay, click. There we go. So I think mainly, I'll tell you one more thing I don't like about the arc. Mainly I don't like the arc either because I generally know where my start point is. I generally know where a center is, and I generally know where my end point is. But if I even mess up that just the tiniest bit, my arc won't be the right size. That's why I tend to prefer just to create circles, because I have a middle and an end point and it goes where it needs to go, right? Anyway, I'll stop with that. And then we have our 3-point arc where we can tell AutoCAD what we want to specify down here at the command line. So specify start point of arc or center point. So I could say, hey, I want to start in the center. Click. Okay, specify center point of arc. So click to start, specify start point of arc. Okay, click, and then it's going to allow me to do the third point, click, which is the end point. So really that 3-point arc just allows you to pick where you want to start or stop, or not start or stop, but what point on that arc you want to choose first, right? So that would be pretty helpful if you were, you know, drawing something and you only knew where the center point was. You could start with the center point, right? That type of thing. All these other ones, right, they kind of reiterate, they're very similar to these. They're just slightly different, so I'm just not going to go over all those. But these first four, they should get you where you need to be, okay? So things like door swings, okay? Very helpful. You can use the arc to create that. Here's where it gets tricky, right? So I have these arcs right here that I want to generate, and I'll probably mess it up when I do it the first time. But now I need to create some arcs, right? So let me show you. I'm going to create a start, center, end, okay? If I start here, I go to the center, I click my end point, it's not going in the right direction, right? If I start here, I click my center point, and now I come down here to the end point, click. It worked, but it wasn't quite the right, it's not quite the right angle there, okay? Sorry, I don't actually have my circle drawn in here, do I? I'm going to do distance, and I'm going to measure this circle, DIST. That circle is 11/16 in diameter. It's a little bit of a tricky dimension to input. 11/16 in diameter. Circle. Let's do a diameter, center diameter. Click. And my diameter is 11/16. That's a good input to learn. Enter. Okay. Sorry, let me just do it again. Okay. So I measured my circle. That was a good way to figure that circle out. And now, instead of my center point kind of being in the center here, which made it too big, my arc, now I can kind of touch right here, start. Oh, no, I lied. Sorry, I'm not thinking about this right. There's my center point over here. Oh, I don't like arcs. Let's create another arc. Start, center, end. Let me draw a circle to show you what I'm talking about here. Okay. You see that? My center is actually right there. Okay, so I have a start, I have a center, and I have an end. I haven't done these for a little while. Okay, so now I'm going to create my arc, start, center, end. All right, I have my start point. Let's hopefully this works. Click, my center, and then my end point. Click. Now if I'd done it the opposite direction, which I think I did the first time, arc, start, center, end. Do you see how it went the other direction, right? That's positive and negative arcs forming. So if you do your arc and it does this, just know that you have to move the opposite direction. That's really all there is to it. So I have my start point, I have my center, and then I have my end. Okay. So you'll have another exercise where you'll have a bunch of these to do, not yet. They're kind of fun. They make you think. They really like allow you to recognize what's right and wrong about, you know, how you're drafting. Makes you think about it. But they're fun. Anyway, good things to put in your portfolio, right? To show people that you can draft. All right. So we know line, we know circle, we know arc, right? We know about object snaps. We know about selection and deleting things. We know about the units in AutoCAD, right? We know how to turn those on and off. We know how to turn our object snaps on and off and what they look like. We know about ortho. We know about polar tracking to help us draw things, right? Very helpful. Do any of you guys have any questions for me on anything? Okay, it's good, good. Okay, let's do a couple more, and I'll spend maybe about 15 more minutes on drawing commands. Let me see. Let's do rectangle, and I want to do ellipse. I want to get through those couple, and I think that will probably be good for today. So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit here. Okay. So I want to talk about rectangle. I want to talk about ellipse because I think this exercise for you is going to be coming next week. Okay. You're going to be drawing a little bathroom, and I want you to be able to do that. Since we were just talking about arcs and circles, let's talk about an ellipse. Okay. an ellipse. This is an ellipse. It's our little toilet seat, and that's a perfectly wonderful use of an ellipse in AutoCAD, right, is to create toilet seats. So let's talk about how to draw that. Now, the ellipse command, a couple of things I want to define, and we'll see these things when we learn about modification commands next time as well, but you're going to start having to pay attention to the idea of an axis in AutoCAD, okay? So within some geometry, we have an axis that we have to specify, and within some modification commands, we have some axes that we have to define, all right? And an axis, right, so for example, in an ellipse, we have one axis that moves that direction vertically, and we have a second axis that moves horizontally. Okay, so this axis right here, there's one, and then there's a second horizontal axis there. Okay, one thing that you may not have noticed me doing, but that I indeed did do, is did you notice that I created a line, I hit escape, and then without typing a command or hitting an icon, I reinitiated it. Did you see me do that? Okay, L for line, enter. I drew one. There's one axis. I hit escape, and then I reinitiated the command, snapped and drew it, escape, escape, without hitting L for line, line, or the icon. Okay. In AutoCAD, if you create something, so for example, a circle, CI is the shortcut for circle, enter. If I create a circle and then I hit escape, okay, to reinitiate the command without having to click on the icon or re-type in the shortcut, I can hit enter. And if I hit enter, AutoCAD reinitiates the command that I had previously been drawing with. Okay, so the last one. So I hit enter, I draw another circle, escape. I hit enter, I hit and draw another circle. So that's something that will improve your speed. It'll make you very quick, right? So I'm typing in commands, I'm hitting enter, I'm executing the command, and then I hit enter to reinitiate commands in sequence. Okay. Okay, so I did that to create this illustration of these two axes that we have on this ellipse here. Okay. So the ellipse icon is this one right here. It's on the Home tab under the tool palette, the Draw tool palette. Okay, and we have really, I think, if we just use the default ellipse, which is just by clicking on the command, click, we're going to be able to draw any type of ellipse you'd ever want. Okay, so we're going to go over just one type of ellipse. So if I hit escape and I click on this ellipse icon, click, okay. AutoCAD is going to guide me through. So specify the center of your ellipse. All right. So let me show you how it's drawn, and then you can practice on your screen. But essentially, we're going to specify the center, and then we're going to specify one axis using a radius, and then the second axis using a radius. Okay. So if we're just drawing it freehand, that's great, right? I can come over here to the side of my toilet, and I can specify the center, click. Specify an endpoint axis, click. Specify a horizontal axis. I'm going to hit F8 to turn on my ortho. You see that? Click. And I made an ellipse. Let me do that one more time. Enter to reinitiate the ellipse command. Center, click. One endpoint, click. Second endpoint, click. Okay, so I specify a center, one radius, and then a second radius. So what that means, if I wanted to recreate this exact ellipse, that means that if it's 1 foot 4 inches, that's its diameter. So that's 16 inches across. That the radius, which is half of that, is 8, right? And this dimension, 1 foot 8 inches, is 20 inches from here to here. So the radius from here to here would be 10 inches. Okay, so when I create this exact ellipse, I'm going to input as my dimension 10 inches for the vertical and 8 inches for the horizontal. Okay, so we'll just do it off to the side so you can see essentially. I'm going to click on ellipse. I'm just going to try and get it lined up a little bit just so we can see it. But I click the middle point, and again, if you forget where you're at, down here at the command line, we can see where we're at. Specify an endpoint. Well, I'm going to move my mouse in the vertical direction. I'm going to type 10. 10. Enter. AutoCAD assumes that's inches, of course. I move in my horizontal direction, specify my next distance, which would be 8 inches. 8, enter. I don't use ellipses that often, right? I just don't. But it's a good tool to know how to use. So that's how you're going to learn. That's how you're going to generate ellipses. You know, for like this toilet block, you're going to have to create. Okay. Our final drawing tool for today. And again, these are all in the video, so I know, you know, we move through these very quickly, but when you generate your assignments, you can go back and look at, you know, the video and pause and make it me talk really fast through it, whatever, right? So all this is going to be on the video that I will post with your assignment and all that good stuff. So the next and final command we're going to talk about today will be a rectangle, okay? So there's a couple of different ways we can create a rectangle, and technically a rectangle is a polygon, okay? We're not going to use the polygon tool per se in AutoCAD to generate a rectangle, but I'm going to show you how to create a rectangle using lines and also the rectangle tool, okay? And there's advantages to using both, okay? So right now, I want to create maybe the outline of this bathtub, right? This bathtub has been created from a couple of different pieces of geometry. This one was created with 1, 2, 3, 4 lines and an ellipse. Great. I could have also created this with a rectangle and then an ellipse in the center. Okay. So the rectangle command, it's a polygon and it's on the draw tool palette up here on the home tab. We have rectangle here. I'm not gonna worry about polygon just yet. Okay, but rectangle. I click on it and I can initiate a rectangle, okay? So I can create a rectangle by eye if I wanted to. I can just sketch something. Click, move in the direction I want to go, click again, there's my rectangle, okay? I hit enter to reinitiate my rectangle command. I click, move in the direction I want to go, click again. There's my rectangle, okay? What's nice about a rectangle is it's what's considered polylines, so it's connected. So I could also create this same rectangle using lines, right? I could come up here to the line tool, click. I can click, move in the direction I want to go. I'm using my snaps to help me, right? I could draw 1, 2, 3 lines. Here's my third line. Click, 4 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I can create 4 lines. But I could also, if I use the rectangle command, if I click, it's a rectangle and it's cohesive. So advantages to using the rectangle command, when I draw it, it's all glued together. It's one piece. So if I have to move it, rotate it, copy it, modify it, it's all one thing. And I don't have to select 4 different objects to modify it, okay? It's made out of one thing. But the disadvantage to that is if I, for example, wanted to delete one piece of it.
Can I interrupt?
Yep, hold on one second. Okay. So we'll finish drawing our rectangles here. We had a little interruption there for those of you online. But the nice thing about, you know, a rectangle that's created out of 1, 2, 3, 4 lines is that if I needed to delete one, I could, right? So it allows me to maybe edit it a little bit easier because it's not glued together. You know, when you start drawing in AutoCAD a little bit more, you get more advanced, you'll figure out which way is best and what method you need to use. You know, but for now, this is kind of a nice way for you to go about it using a rectangle because it's all one piece, okay? So I click on rectangle, I can click, I can draw rectangles, I can draw squares, right? I can draw outlines of bathtubs, which is great. I'm going to measure this bathtub and then I'm going to show you how to create a dimensional rectangle, okay? DIST, distance, enter. I'm going to click, that is 2'6", and I'm going to hit enter to reinitiate that distance command without going up to the icon. Click by 5 foot. So 5 foot by 2, was that 2'6"? 2'6" by 5 foot. Okay. So let's create a rectangle that's that dimension. Pan over a little bit, zoom in. I'm going to type RECT, rectangle. That is the shortcut for rectangle, RECT. It might even just be REC. Yeah, REC. Enter. I'm going to initiate the command by clicking on my first point. Click. Now, instead of just clicking another point, I'm going to come down here to my command line and I'm going to click on dimension. You see I have a little dimension option. We're going to start getting into options within commands. So AutoCAD has a ton of options for drawing, right? It's a drawing program. So we have a ton of different options for drawing. So I click on dimension and it says specify a length, 5 foot, enter. Specify a width, 2 foot 6, enter. We're not done yet. Now it says, hey, specify another corner point. So it wants to know whether it's going to be down here or up here or over here or right there. Okay, so I can click and I finish my rectangle and it's where it needs to be. Okay, so in this case, the width, right? So if I re-enter the rectangle command and I click on, REC, enter, I click my first point, I come down here to dimension. The length is in the X direction, okay? And then the width is in the Y direction, all right? So if you had accidentally typed 2 foot 6, 2 foot 6, enter, and then 5 foot, enter, it would have been vertical, okay? And when we learn how to rotate things, that's not a big problem because we created it. Let's just rotate it to make it the right size, no big deal. But for now, you don't know how to do that, so you want to know how to draw it correctly, okay? But the length is in the X and the width is in the Y, okay? So we know how to create circles, arcs, lines, rectangles, ellipses, okay? Let me just make sure that I haven't missed anything. Let me go over to our module here and just make sure that everything has been talked about that I wanted to talk about today. Oh, not this. Let's see, here we go. And I'll publish this once I get the video. Line, circle, arc, polygon, rectangles, ellipse. We didn't get to polylines, but I think I'll introduce you to the idea of a polyline and then we'll stop for today. A polyline functions just like a regular line, but it's a glued together line, really. That's the only difference. So L for line, enter. When I click and I create line segments, we've got a lot of geometry in our screen right now. Click, 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 escape. Each of these line segments is individual. So if I hit delete, it just deletes that one piece, right? Click, delete. There's no association between these lines other than they touch. All right. A polyline, okay, is this command right here. It's the shortcut is PL at the command line. And a polyline, click. When I create a polyline, it functions identically to a regular line. But when I hit escape and I'm done drawing it, when I click on it, it's all one piece, right? So this is kind of that same thing where we have rectangle that is a rectangle and it's a polygon, or we have a rectangle that's 4 lines, right? Do we want all those lines glued together for easy manipulation, or do we want them all separate, okay? Again, once you start getting into AutoCAD and you use it more, you'll figure out when and where you feel like it's appropriate to do different things. Polygons are really nice because they are cohesive. So if you draw floor plan lines with it, you move it, they all move together, right? So that's nice. When we get into hatching things, right, adding those shades, the pochets, solid, earth hatches, cross hatches, whatever, polygons are really nice because they're a closed region, which will allow hatch to form, okay? And we'll talk about that when we get there. But a polyline is really just one line that is all glued together, okay? Okay, that was a lot today. Any questions so far? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, let me stop the video here. Stop.